Hey friends, this is Boomy here. I am just going to respond to a message about a follow-along video that I put out there, and a person responded with some comments about their beliefs of my fighting, and I figured I would take this time to sort of elaborate on the reasonings as to why I do what I do. Before we got too far in the video, I just wanted to say I do PT type work for a living. I have done that for the last many years, and that while not the foremost expert, I do have more expertise than most in this particular topic, especially when it comes to biomechanics of a body. I made this video for folks to follow along, just a little bit of footwork and basic mechanical work, just for something to get a bit of extra exercise and be able to have something to train. This person responded, sorry to be this guy, but I think there are quite a lot of problems here. They were very nice about it. I would not be making a video response if they were a dick about it. What they say here is essentially, I worry that beginners could make some bad habits, and there are things that you are doing that are problematic. I ask for elaboration in this next post, and from here, they start to say, well, even if you don't follow masters and treatises, there are things that most rapiers agree upon. And I very much agree to that point. There are limiters like physics and biomechanics. Other than that, there's a lot of subjectivity and context that goes into the actions that you choose to make in a particular moment. First, lunges with the back foot in the air are a big no-no. This is a huge problem if you do fence like that, and I would recommend you work on it.
All right, so I wanted to differentiate the difference between a jumping lunge and a standard lunge. For myself, a standard lunge looks like this. I'm going to be doing this and attacking my opponent. So it looks like this from the front. That's a lunge. I've stepped forward, I've lunged. Hopefully most folks have seen what a lunge looks like at this point. Now, the reason I do what I consider a jumping lunge, where the back foot is pushing the front foot to land and then I'm square again, is it allows me to then act and do a proper lunge after. This is really good for closing a lot of distance quickly. Jumping lunge, actual lunge. The reason for the jumping lunge is so when I land, my hips are still square, I'm still level, I am balanced 50-50 between my front and back foot, and when my opponent, if they do something unpredictable and I need to leave, I can push off my front foot and get right back out. So it looks like this in function. So jumping lunge, oh no, step out. Jumping lunge, oh no, step out. Facing the camera, do a jumping lunge towards you, step out.
They go on to say, secondly, you use your left foot without putting your heel on the ground. This is quite a debatable choice and can be used with success in rapier and dagger, but is usually something that will happen during an action with the dagger of a specific move, with the heel on the ground the rest of the time. Heel contact is fundamental as it will drastically help for lunges, speed, and recovery. In this sense, I think your whole posture is off and would limit the future ability of a beginner to improve their lunges. The only situation where I would consider your posture is in very bad terrain, but I don't think fighting a duel in such a terrain would be logical.
All right, we have the heel of the back foot on the ground, and I'm able to push off that heel to get this nice lunge. And ideally, I'm hiding behind my guard. I have that nice lean forward. That's what a lunge looks like. Over here, here's that lunge. Again, lunge. So, in single sword and in modern strip fencing, using the heel is a pretty common practice. For single sword, it makes a lot of sense. You want to profile your body so that there's minimal target, and as you lunge, you are hiding behind your guard, pushing everything else offline. That makes a ton of sense. The reason I don't is because I fight with an offhand implement most of the time. In my case, I use sword and dagger. If I am very profiled, you'll notice my dagger hand is now very retracted from the fight. It is not very relevant to interacting with any of their implements. If I square my hips and bring my dagger forward, it is now part of the fight. It can be a useful implement. So my reasoning is I want to bring my second hand into the fight. So I'm very used to being in this posture, squared up to ground. As far as considering the speed and capacity to push off with your heel compared to your toe, I would say if it were truly the only way to go, runners wouldn't have runner blocks that start in this posture. Right, when you imagine a professional runner, their starting block looks like this. You can generate a ton of force off that back foot when you're starting on a runner's block like this. Ideally, I'm pushing off of the entirety of my foot with a slanted back foot, but that doesn't exist in function. So best we can do is use that active toe to be able to spring forward. Now, I agree with their point about rough terrain. Because I play in the SCA, we're usually outdoors and you get tufts of grass, slidey hay, and a bunch of miscellaneous terrain that you do have to overcome, and that is going to be different than a duel indoors. That's a part of my reasoning there, and I agree with their point.
In the next bit, they say your parry system is something that I think is okay for small sword or late or transitional and lighter rapiers. On the other hand, the relatively long or heavy rapier, parries using the false edge on the outside line are not recommended for beginners, as they should focus on straight edge parry, straight edge blade actions. When they say straight edge, I think they mean true edge blade actions. I guess they could be interchangeable terms. In general, with early rapiers, straight edge parries will nearly always lead to better engagements. Also, low parries exist, but they are very anecdotal, and it's generally accepted that the low line attacks should be countered by other means.
So, to their point, they are saying two things. One, they're saying that the parry here to the outside should not be done with my false edge, but my true edge like this. They're saying to parry to the outside like this, as opposed to this, that this is less beginner friendly. I believe whether or not it is beginner friendly really depends on the beginner in question. Some people have the capacity to learn and understand the idea that it doesn't matter which edge you use. Really, the strength is because this is the wider part of the blade and this is the skinny, weak part of the blade. However, I do believe it could be true for some folks where it's better to have them parry their strength, their true edge to the outside. Secondly, when they say low line parries are not irrelevant and there are other ways to deal with it, there are other ways to deal with it. However, if you have watched any recent streams with John and I, after 250 some odd people we fought through to get to the finals of this past golf, the way John took my foot is the one moment I wasn't guarding my low line, ready to parry on the inside. He's that good with the leg shot. I believe if this was a life or death situation, as in I am trying to not get killed, then I may have and choose other interactions when someone throws a foot shot. But because of the parameters of the sport that I play, I choose to parry the foot shot in the way that I do.
The last little bit here, they say, last, you don't mention single time actions, which I think are a very important thing to learn early. Early rapiers will not lend well to a parry riposte at all because of their weight and length. You even specifically advise against them around 2 minutes, whereas if you can find the sword of the opponent, this would nearly always be better.
All right, what that last bit says is essentially single time actions, meaning if I can parry, capture, and riposte through, it is a better action. That is absolutely true. If I know where their blade is going to be and I can just punch my guard into it and throw my blade into them all in one action, fantastic. That's great. Yay me. The reason I teach it the way I do is because realistically, a good player will not let you know where their blade is going to be. If you made the read and you know exactly where their blade is going to be, kill them. That is very straightforward and easy. But a lot of times you don't know where their blade is going to be. And so when I step back and parry, I'm looking to get as much coverage from head to toe as I can. When I watch this, a lot of beginners I am taught to take my guard and do that one-time action that you're talking about. We're doing this, oh, and we've caught and pushed through, or caught, pushed through. The issue is that they try to do this to catch their opponent's blade, and their opponent disengages and they die. It happens all the time. The reason I teach defend yourself first and then riposte as a 2-action item is because I care more that a newer person understands to step back and defend themselves. To step back and defend themselves. This, to me, is really a better form of mastery. Being aware of your measure and being aware of good coverage with your blade mechanics. Cover, cover, cover. Hopefully that makes sense. I do not think it is wrong to use single-time actions. However, I believe it is a little too emphasized. Unfortunately, it really depends on whether or not you can know where their blade is going to be. That's the main differentiation. I don't think it's wrong to teach either to a new person, but I do believe it's good to make a clear differentiation as to reasonings as to why one is chosen over the other.
So I just wanted to give a quick clip demonstrating some of the actions that I talked about in this video in live action scenario. This is a tournament from a few weeks ago at Defending the Gate here in Lantia, and I am going to break that down frame by frame. So I am starting outside of measure, and I'm going to take an entry step to get the measure that I want. As I do that, I am disengaging to the outside of their main blade, causing them to parry to the outside with their blade. And as they do, that tip comes offline, which is why I prefer it to be online, because now it's very easy for me to put my dagger in and replace. As I do so, my tip is now traveling low to disengage around their blade. Knowing that their dagger wants to go low as well, I want to continue to disengage around it. So their dagger comes down, and I'm disengaging around it. You'll notice in my footwork here, I've landed, I'm square, and I'm ready to launch again, so I launch again. This time, instead of a lunge, I'm doing what we talked about earlier, a jumping lunge. And I believe I was doing this because I believed that they were going to step back. However, they didn't, and I got the kill here in this quadrant that I was shooting for. But if they were going to step back, I was able to then launch again from this position. However, I felt the blow, and I knew this was going to be done. For the rest of you out there, hopefully you learned a little bit about why I do what it is I do and the reasonings behind it. I don't believe there's one way to approach it. There are so many factors that go into any sort of physical skill acquisition. There's generally a best practice for most things. However, there are contextual changes that must be made for the individual. And this is where I believe a lot of the subjectivity of fencing lies. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you in the next one.